Okay, I think we can get started. Just want to confirm that the webinar has begun.
Yes, thanks, Jason. Go ahead.
Great. Okay, thank you. And welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Customer Talks webinar, where we'll be sharing and discussing insights and feedbacks from our SATO customers and partners in Asia and Africa. I'm Jason Cardozi with Partnerships and Market Insights at SATO. And today, together with our colleagues and partners, we will be discussing hand hygiene, a topic seeing a lot of innovation and attention from both the public and private sectors. And we'll be with our team and our partners in UNICEF and MWater, and we'll be talking about how we collaborated on the SATO tap as part of efforts to improve the setting for hand washing and to make it easier and more convenient for potentially millions of people. And just turning to the agenda, if I could share my screen, please. Okay. We have a very strong list of presenters here, and I'll be introducing them very shortly. We'll have introductions from both UNICEF and SATO on updates from their organizations, the sectors, and how we work together. We'll then hear about how the SATO tap came about and some of the production and design process that led to this new product. We'll then hear from the rapid trial results of the tap carried out by UNICEF and MWater in Asia and Africa. And we'll then turn to regional insights from our teams from Africa and Asia. And so anytime during the session, please feel free to type in questions either in the Zoom Q&A or through whichever platform you're joining us today from, and we'll get to as many as we can before the end of the session. And just one housekeeping, this session is being recorded and may be used for comms purposes by the organizing partners. And so let's get started. And to kick us off, I would like to introduce first the leader of SATO, Erin McCusker. Very welcome.
Great, thanks, Jason. And thanks to everyone who's joining us. We're really excited to kick off these customer talks. And as Jason said, hand hygiene is an important topic, and it's certainly one that has a large amount of innovation for us to be bringing into the conversation. For those of you that may be new to SATO, SATO is a brand within Lixil, who's a global maker of pioneering water and housing products. And SATO is an award-winning social business that has the purpose to offer everyone in the world a better everyday life and a brighter future through innovative sanitation and hygiene solutions. Our aim is to improve the lives of 100 million people by 2025, and we have already impacted 25 million lives since inception, produced and shipped over 5.1 million units to over 41 countries. But importantly, our partnerships are a key aspect of our business model. And as you'll hear today from some of our partners, Lixil and UNICEF have a really unique partnership. Our Make a Splash partnership started in 2018. It was a first shared value partnership for UNICEF with a Japanese company in WASH, and it is aiming to contribute to accelerate our global progress to SDG 6. We do that by focusing on a core select number of countries and work on market shaping programs. We also support advocacy efforts, and as you'll hear, really aim to drive innovation and help to promote the role of private sector in bringing these innovations into the market. As of January, we've already reached 2.9 million people, and we look forward to seeing that number growing over time. The most important thing, and what I really hope that we can highlight today, is that this is a learning partnership. This is a way for UNICEF, for the private sector, and all of our partners on the ground to learn how we can work better together, particularly when we're focused on market-based approaches. This is critical. We know from the global data that was just released from JMP that we cannot do things the same way. We have to start thinking differently about how do we tackle these global problems. And the private sector, we want to bring our business approach, our innovation, and our ability to really put the customer at the center to tackle these global challenges with you and with the countries. As a customer-centric brand, consumer insights are a fundamental part of our business. And I'm really delighted to be able to share how UNICEF, Water, and all of our partners came together to really ensure that the customer insights and customer feedback were at the center as we took on the new challenge of hand hygiene. So thank you all for being here. A huge amount of thanks to UNICEF, Water, and our partners, and looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. Thanks so much for kicking us off, Erin. And now to turn to that key partner, UNICEF, I'm really pleased to welcome Ann Thomas, Senior WASH Advisor, UNICEF New York. Over to you, Ann.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks, Erin, for the introduction to the partnership. I just wanted to start by saying thank you to LICFL for having us join this morning, and for the ongoing partnership that, while formally started in 2018, actually started many years before that with our joint interest in accelerating sanitation and hygiene for all. During the COVID pandemic, the world, both developing and developed countries, struggled to respond to the crisis and provide guidance for their populations. We saw unfailingly that countries gravitated towards hand hygiene as a central pillar of COVID mitigation strategies. We've known even before the COVID pandemic started that hand hygiene is one of the most cost-effective and effective things you can do to protect yourself from diseases ranging from diarrhea to respiratory illnesses that are currently the top killers of children under 5. Yet, what became very striking during the pandemic is that only 40% of the world's population, or 3 billion people, have access to hand hygiene. That means half of the schools in the least developed countries still lack hand hygiene facilities, and this affects over 900 million school-age children who, in many cases, were prevented from going to school during the global pandemic. 35% of healthcare settings do not have running water and soap for hand washing. During the pandemic, UNICEF was active in 135 countries, providing support to hand hygiene programs, and this ran along 3 main lines. The first was in strengthening government leadership for hand hygiene and helping to transition hand hygiene from a one-off intervention to a public health intervention rooted in public policy with financing, regulatory processes, and true government commitment. We also supported the application of evidence-based behavior change programs to ensure that investments could last and really create habit in populations. And finally, we were supporting strengthening local sanitation and hygiene markets for sanitation and hygiene, and particularly for hand hygiene, because one thing that happened during the pandemic, which marked a bit of a change in focus, was the need for hand hygiene across multiple settings. While we had traditionally had a focus on homes and schools, it now became clear that we needed facilities that were easy to access, were affordable and easy to transport to settings like bus stations and marketplaces. And it just became clear the gaps, not only in the data that we had on what was available, but the actual accessibility. I was leading a response in Indonesia during the COVID crisis, and it was very clear that it was difficult to evolve these facilities in real time. We also know that having a facility is half the battle to adopting the habit. And so the private sector became very important during the COVID response in being that provider of innovation and in quickly adapting to the challenge. One of the initiatives that UNICEF took on globally was to start the Global Hand Hygiene for All initiative with the World Health Organization and other key players. The initiative was really targeting how to take advantage of the attention to hand hygiene during the pandemic and convert that into long-term investments and programming in hand hygiene that would actually extend beyond the current pandemic, because we know the importance of hand hygiene as a public health intervention. We also believe that through greater government leadership, we anticipate longer lasting hygiene behavior change programs. As I mentioned, the private sector plays a key role in our approach to hand hygiene, which spans 3 pillars of behavior change, strengthening markets, and public policy. We know that hand hygiene is only effective when coupled with the facilities, and it's here that we really saw LIXIL step up and take a key role during the pandemic. Our partnership, as Aaron mentioned, started in 2018 with the Make a Splash partnership with the objective of strengthening sanitation markets in East Africa. But when the COVID pandemic hit, the partnership was quickly able to galvanize and pivot towards hand hygiene to look at the feedback coming back from countries around the world for this gap in hand hygiene facilities that were low cost, were easy to transport, and easily adaptable in a variety of contexts. So I think, you know, the discussion today is not only about the SATO tap, but it's really about this partnership that we were able to form, this collaboration between, you know, leveraging the strength of the public sector in sort of bringing to the table market insights, consumer feedback, you know, real gaps in the sector at the moment, and quickly evolving products to meet that gap. Building on our existing partnership, UNICEF and LIXIL are now testing the functionality and user experience of the tap among vulnerable communities in 5 countries. That's Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, India, and Bangladesh. And today we have 310,000 SATO taps distributed around the world, and they're being assessed for their field of performance. So I think today, as we go forward, I really look forward to a lively conversation, and perhaps would like to leave you not only thinking about, you know, the story of the SATO tap and you know, the amazing sort of synergy between public and private sectors in terms of R&D capacity and feeding feedback from countries and working with governments to adopt new technologies and new approaches. But I would also like you to think about, you know, this new model that we're sharing for public and private collaboration to take advantage of comparative strengths and to meet emerging needs in the sector as we are in the final stretch towards reaching the SDG targets. On that note, thank you very much, Jason, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you and to all your colleagues globally, regionally, in the different countries we work in for your leadership in the sector and your market facilitation work. And now turning to this solution, the SATO tap itself, really happy to introduce, I think many of you know him and his name and his image, Daigo Ishiyama, who is the leader of innovation at SATO and also the designer of the SATO tap, to take us through the story of how this product came about. Welcome, Daigo.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here. Hello, everyone. Yes, so I want to take you through a little bit about, you know, how we went through the development process of SATO tap and how we work with partners, including UNICEF, to hit the speed to market. And, you know, I want to share with you some stories behind, you know, those critical weeks of development and how we were able to implement this solution quickly. So I want to reiterate, you know, what Anne just said. You know, hand washing is one of the most cheapest and the most effective ways of combating the spread of the coronavirus. But I think a lot of us got to know this since the start of the pandemic, including, you know, myself. So SATO had the hand washing solution in the product timeline. But we really decided to move the hand washing development forward in the timeline at the start of the pandemic. You know, we decided to answer the call to action. So this is a personal story, but like in end of March of last year, I contracted the coronavirus myself, and I fell ill for like 2 weeks. But during that time, I was thinking, okay, so what can we do as SATO to really support the global community on this pandemic? So we decided to focus on coming out with this hand washing solution. So the first thing we did was we saw the the hand washing landscape in the global market. And partners like UNICEF were really helpful in providing that global view on the hand washing and what's been done, and just to discuss on, okay, so what's what the market gap was. So we started working with UNICEF in around March, April time frame. And after I got this, got over this this COVID symptoms, I remember during the Easter weekend, I was chasing my son in the backyard for Easter egg hunt, and all I could think about was this hand washing solution for SATO. So that night, I went to my computer and I started working on this concept. So that was the first concept I made, and I shared that with the team. But so since then, it's been a real team effort. Everyone pitched in. Partners like like UNICEF, they were really helpful in getting us that global view on the hand washing. And so for the next 6 weeks since the Easter weekend, we worked really quickly to develop concepts. So we went through about 5 major design iterations, but UNICEF brought in hand washing experts and gave us really good critiquing on those concepts. And so those were invaluable for us. As private sector, we have expertise in R&D, designs, manufacturing, and bring to route to market expertise, but really that global view from the public sector to really inform us on what's been done, and all that information was really invaluable. If you can imagine a guy working in his basement to design stuff, but really doesn't know if it's going to work, and who better partner is there like UNICEF to provide input and feedback on that. So I remember those weeks we were exchanging information, and it's really the speed to market, the sense of urgency we had. The news that I was playing in the background had news about the ICU units being full, people getting dying from the disease and all. So we really had this sense of urgency to bring a good solution to help the global community. So so that went on for like I said, for about 6 weeks, and so we came up with this this solution we call the SATO tap. So I want to just kind of take you through some slides to show you, in case for those of you that's never seen the SATO tap. If you can see my screen. And yeah, so that's the tippy tap that I was talking about. And so the SATO tap looks like this. So it consists of 2 parts, a base and a nozzle. And you put a used plastic bottle on top as a water reservoir, and it has a soap dish that reminds people, hey, you have to use soap. And really, hand washing with soap is very critical. So the soap dish does that. And the if I may, if we can geek out for a second, this is the inner workings of SATO tap. So the bottle, you insert the bottle, and the water level is set at the tip of the bottle, right? And then so when you tip the nozzle downward, that makes the dispensing hole lower than the tip of the bottle, and it creates this little head pressure above the dispensing hole, and it dispenses the water. But really, by adjusting this the geometry and the hole, the dispensing hole, we can really control the flow rate that comes out of the dispensing hole. So, we optimized this for hand washing, and really the goal was to not waste a drop of water that's in that bottle. And so with this technology, we were able to enable hand washing in as little as 100 milliliters of water. So, so this is how, we were able to achieve the water saving feature of SATO Tap. So after the design was frozen, and like Aaron said, this SATO Tap is really the entry into hand washing for SATO. This is part of our evolving product portfolio. So we really needed to test what we made. So, so the SCM team was really, nifty on their foot to really get the manufacturing partners on board early on in the design phase. So we were able to turn the design into samples really quickly. So by September, we had samples in our hand, right? So as private sectors do, we put the samples to good use and started testing, the samples. And one of the testings we did was this cycle testing. So we tested to 3.65 million cycles to simulate 100 years of use for a family of 5 people. So we did things like this to really, to ensure long-term use. And aside from that, we brought the units to South Asia and Africa. And, we got the customer feedback, we got some use cases. And, these are some of the images from India and Africa, but this is where we brought the hand washing station to a food stand and got customer feedbacks. And in Africa, we brought it to households and had everyone in the household use it to ensure that everyone can use it. They can place the SATO Tap anywhere they needed, hand washing, and so forth. And so overall, the feedback was really good, really positive. So that's when we decided to go for a greater scale, a broader scale field testing, and which we will hear from John from M-Water, after this. But so that's what we did. But UNICEF, was really instrumental in helping us with with coordinating with M-Water in Africa, in East Africa, to test the SATO Tap. But also, in South Asia, they were able to carry out these tests for us too. So from start to end, really, I think the private sector, the strength of private sector, and the strength of public sector partners like UNICEF, really created really good synergy, and we were able to build the tap in such short time frame. So in summary, SATO Tap, its benefits are, it's water saving. It provides access, to hand washing. You can hand wash wherever you need to hand wash. And it's really easy to operate. Kids can operate. Anyone in the household can operate, and it provides a means to a proper hand washing. So that's a little bit about the SATO Tap and how it came about. So that's it for me. Over to you, Jason.
Great, thanks so much, Daigo. And if anyone has questions, again, please feel free to use the Q&A function. We will be pausing, not right now, but shortly, to take any questions that we have for Daigo and the rest of the speakers. So Daigo also mentioned this rapid trial of the prototype that took place in 5 countries. And now we're really happy to have John Fury here, who led that trial and who is the COO and co-founder of M-Water. So John will be presenting the results now of that trial. John, you're very welcome.
Great, thank you, Jason. And it's really great to be here. And like Jason said, we will have time for questions, hopefully at the end of my talk here, but if not, at the end of the whole session. I'm just going to see if I can share screen. Okay. You guys getting that? All right.
Yeah.
So we were brought on to this project thanks to a existing partnership we had with the UNICEF Lixil team through UNICEF Eastern Southern Africa regional office, where for the past 2 years we've been the lead for the monitoring and evaluation system of the partnership's efforts to introduce the SATO toilet pan, which is a device for improving the performance and usability of the latrine. And so we had been working in these 3 countries in East Africa already, and we had been using a kind of an innovative approach where we used what we call local youth citizen reporters. So these are young people who are college educated, often underemployed, which is a big problem across many countries. And they go and do surveys and collect data from their own communities, and they know the local health authorities and local government over the course of the monitoring effort that they do, and we get really rapid data. And so this was the perfect use of that system because we were able to very quickly get data on this new product, and what would have normally taken probably a year to spin up a rapid testing, field test in 5 countries. We were able to do it really quickly in about 2 months. So moving into the agenda for today, first I'm going to go over the methodology, explain that a little bit and how we went about doing this. I'll talk about the study settings and the demographics of the populations there, the results of our household testing and retailer interviews. So we did testing in the households, but interviewed retailers in the areas where the households were located. And then some findings and recommendations that really are coming from us and the local UNICEF teams. So just diving in to the methods, we had 2 data sources, as I mentioned. The households, we gave them a 1-week trial with a buyback offer. This actually was done in East Africa, but not in South Asia. And I should explain that UNICEF did the research in South Asia, which was in India and Bangladesh, and MWater did the research in East Africa. So there were some differences because they had spun up more quickly in India, as you just heard from Daigo. So as they were going about it, we were developing a more defined method that we then used in Africa. So we had a pre-survey. We asked about household hand washing practices and also the access to water and some other things like their wealth and assets on a standard index. Then we had a post-survey where we mainly asked about the user experience. And with the retailers, we basically just demonstrated the product and did a quick interview about whether they thought they would sell it and what they would sell it for. The sample is targeted to be 10 to 20 households in a single community per country. That could be a village or a neighborhood in an urban area. These are some of the criteria for the evaluation. You can see pre-trial, we were asking them more about how they think they would use the device and of course the household characteristics and their initial impressions. What do they think of just looking at this and seeing how it works? We gave a very short demonstration of putting it together and how it works, but other than that, we let them just give us feedback. And then in the post-trial, we were interested in how they used it, where they used it, what their experiences were with the various aspects that we already knew would be things we wanted to know more about, like the flow rate and the refill frequency. And then we also had this, as I mentioned, a buyback offer where we gave them a hypothetical retail price and said, we'll buy it back from you after this trial for half of that price. Would you like to keep it or would you like to take that offer? So that's the basic methodology. And first I'll start with the settings here in East Africa. As I said, we were already in these countries, with our monitoring system. So it was very easy to deploy to a village or a community that we already knew from our work with the SATO PAN. This research was conducted by us and with Tectona Group in Kenya, our partner. In Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, is a very urban area that we were working. These people were part of a social protection program, so like social security or welfare, basically. And so they tended to be more elderly households, and less kids there, but and they also tended to have piped water into the house or the compound because they're in an urban area. In Kitui County, Kenya, it's a very arid, remote region that we were in. So water scarcity was a big problem. More than half of the people use surface water for drinking and household use. And then in Tanzania, we were in Iringa district, which is an agricultural region. I wouldn't say it's, they don't have a lot of water, but they're not water scarce. They have enough. And most people were using community borehole as their water source there. So in South Asia, and again, this was research conducted by the UNICEF country offices and the regional office for South Asia. And they, as I mentioned, India had a somewhat earlier version. They asked the same questions, but it was a little bit less, defined as to how we asked the questions. And they didn't make the buyback offer in those countries. So in Bihar, it was a rural area, as most of Bihar would be, and they have seasonal water scarcity, but not severe, and at least in that area. And then in Bangladesh, we had a rural village and an urban municipality in the same union, in the same area. And then in Maharashtra, India, this was a very water scarce area that they were working in. It was a rural village again. So that would be the most water stressed area in Asia that we looked at. So I won't bore you with the demographics, but you can see that we got close to our targets of 10 to 20 households in each area. And we did have a good number of households with children, some with elderly people who, really we expect would benefit from this device. And as you'll see later, there was a lot of feedback that the device was helpful with those populations. So we wanted to have a diverse group of people. And we also measured the household asset and wealth index that gave us wealth quintiles. So you can kind of see how how the households are distributed compared to the national poverty line. And in most of the places, we hit pretty much in the middle to upper income areas, but you can see in Kenya, we had a much larger population that was lower income, primarily because it was a really remote rural village that we were in. So a good distribution of different characteristics of people and households. This is the WASH data. We did a quick questionnaire according to the JMP methods. And you can see in Tanzania, most people use a borehole for their drinking water source. So they transport water back to their house from a community borehole. In Kenya, most people were using surface water, and Ethiopia, most were unpiped into a dwelling or yard or plot. And a similar diversity in terms of hygiene services. In Tanzania, about half the people had what we call basic, so they have a hygiene facility with soap and water. And then about half have nothing, no facility. In Kenya, most people had no facility. There's nobody that even had a limited facility. In Ethiopia, most people had some kind of facility, but some didn't have soap or water. That was the limited bar here. So jumping right into the impressions from the trial. Overall, the feedback was really very positive in terms of initial impressions after using the device. You can see here we coded the overall. We asked open-ended questions, but then we did some coding of the responses afterward. And overall, people's impressions were good or very good. We also recorded this category of nice but, because in many of these countries, it's considered rude to give negative feedback without first framing it as some, in some positive way. So we also wanted to make sure we captured that. If they said, it's great, but it would be nice if something was different, then we also wanted to get that feedback. And over here, you can see it, we've coded the responses more by their topic. And the number one positive feedback we received was that it saves water, especially in Kenya and other regions. And by the way, this data is from East Africa here. And ease of use was very, very high on the list. People liked that it was portable and easy to turn on and off. They thought the materials were good. They liked the color for the most part. The number one negative piece of feedback we got was that the size is too small, and that came from particularly in Tanzania, and I'll get into that more later, and the flow rate being too low for certain uses. And this depends a lot on your perceptions of how you want to wash your hands and how much water you have available to do it. So as for where people put the device in their home, there was a really interesting range of options that people decided to do on their own. We didn't recommend to them where to put it. We asked them where they would put it, and we asked where they did put it. And in East Africa, you can see most people put it outside the house. And the next highest category was near the toilet, probably in places where people knew that was important to, they may have already received hygiene behavior messaging about hand washing near the toilet. And some people put it outside the house. They said they like to have it outside as they come in from outside. This was during COVID. So people were very concerned about bringing germs home from the outside. Some people were a little concerned about the device getting stolen. So they would actually move it from outside to inside every night. Because it's so portable, it's actually, it could be easy to run away. And then some people hung it with the rope, which is a really cool option actually, to be able to put it, exactly where you want it without having to have a stand or a table or something. And then we also had some feedback where some people said they didn't like having to bend down to it. And that's mainly because they just didn't have an appropriately height, a table of appropriate height to use it. The feedback from South Asian countries was pretty similar. Most people put it near the entrance, near the toilet. And then you see it, some people put it near the water source, especially in Bihar, which is often because they may have a tube well right outside the house or nearby. And that's where they prefer to wash their hands because they have the access to water there. Oh, and before I move on, half of the household said they would like more than one tap. So it was a common thing to hear, it'd be great if we had more than one, we'd put one in front of the house, one by the toilet or whatever. So that's interesting as well. As for suggested improvements, this is another question we asked, kind of open-ended and then categorized later. And the feedback was very, very similar between East Africa and Southeast Asia. If you look at the number one request is increase the capacity or increase the flow. This generally comes from places where they have plenty of water. So you did not hear that feedback in Kenya, in the arid region, or in Maharashtra and in India. You only heard it in places where people had water. So there's a real division between people that really valued the water saving features of the device and people that really valued the convenience of it. And the convenience side would rather have obviously a bigger bottle, a bigger flow rate because they have plenty of water and they just like the way it works. We also had them make it taller, which I think had to do with the needing to bend down to use it comment earlier, and make it larger. And very few people wanted to change the color. A few wanted it to be white and something else, I forgot. But most people found the blue pretty appealing. And this leaking problem mentioned in South Asia, I think was fixed by, that was a very early comment, and I think they made some changes to fix that. So already seeing some improvements result from that. Bottles was an interesting issue. It seemed to us that the bottle was, a great solution because you could use a local bottle. and that's true. But the larger bottle that you usually see with the device is a 2-liter bottle, and we found that those were kind of uncommon in the more rural areas, where people tend to buy water or soda in smaller amounts, and there's less. In an urban area, you'll see all kinds of bottles everywhere, but in rural areas that are lower resource, the bottles are actually kind of valuable, and so they're a little hard to find. We in both Kenya and Tanzania, I think we found 1.5-liter bottles were available, and that's what we supplied it with. So you can see that they had to. The feedback from the households was they had to change the bottle 2 or 3 times a day for an average size household. And the retailers also said, we had the same feedback from the retailers that most of them didn't sell the 2-liter bottle, but they had some other kinds of bottles. And an interesting thing happened in Tanzania in a few households, not just one. When we came back a week later, the 1.5-liter bottle that we had provided with the unit was gone, and they had replaced it with a smaller soda bottle. So they obviously found some better use for the larger bottle. So it just shows that those, they're kind of valuable, and it might be a consideration down the road to think about, whether the bottle needs to be provided or not. And we also asked about alternative hand washing solutions that were available. And they kind of fall into 2 categories. Some are really much more expensive than our hypothetical price. Some are much less expensive. We had given them, for the buyback offer, we had chosen just a hypothetical price of $3, which is basically in between these 2 options, was the idea. And some people, that were using a more costly device, where mostly that was in Tanzania in our study, and they tend to use these big buckets with a tap installed, and so you have to, a bucket is valuable, but it's very common to see this solution in Tanzania, even in rural areas, but also in restaurants and everywhere you go, you see that giant bucket with soapy water. Now in Ethiopia, we found, it's an urban area, plenty of access to water close to the home. So people tended to use these really cheap, pitchers and basins, much less hygienic. And people mentioned that. And also, with the larger bucket solution, everybody has to touch that tap and turn it on and off. So there is that potential contamination pathway there too. And some people did mention that this is a more hygienic way to wash your hands compared to the existing ways, and that's what they meant. The hand washing hardware market is not really like a product segment in most of the rural areas here. It's not like you go to the hardware store and see, a bunch of hand washing stuff. You see, plastic goods that are buckets and taps and pitchers, and it's considered a houseware basically. So introducing this device is kind of like, in those places, creating what you might call a product segment or something. But this is really important to consider wherever you're going. What are people, what's available to people, and what do they use instead right now? So getting to pricing, we had this data from East Africa again. We also asked people in India and Bangladesh what they thought it should cost. We didn't do the buyback offer, but we still got really useful data. Half of the households in East Africa thought the $3 hypothetical price was reasonable. There's a difference between reasonable and yes, I want to buy it. So I'll get into that in a sec. But most of the people that didn't thought $1 to $2 was fair. And very similar feedback. We've converted this from local currencies into US dollars for comparison, and you can see very similar feedback. The average was around $1.3 in India and Bangladesh. So pretty universal agreement on what people would like the product to cost, but whether they want to buy it, depends on other factors as well. So in Ethiopia, you can see over here in this chart, very few people said they would purchase it at, at the price that they named. Whereas in Kenya and Tanzania, we had about, half or more, even higher in Tanzania, that said they were likely or very, very likely to purchase the product. And that might be, that might have to do with the existing solution being very widely available in Ethiopia. Remember, most people had some kind of hand washing facility already, and it was mostly just a pitcher and basin, like I showed above. So that was some interesting feedback as well. So the price is not the only factor. Also, you need to address whether people find it valuable or useful. So just to summarize the household feedback, very positive impressions. Only 10% in East African countries took the buyback offer, which was pretty, clear messaging, because we're offering cash in hand versus keeping the product. Water efficiency obviously was the highest advantage in places where there was water scarcity, which is important to think about. And then in places where there wasn't water scarcity, people wanted to increase the capacity. And as I mentioned, the price of $1 to $2 was what most people settled on. And overwhelmingly, people thought this was a better way of washing your hands than whatever they were using before. From the retailers, I note this is a really small sample, 10 in our study and 6 in India. So I think a more comprehensive, market assessment should interview more retailers. We just interviewed ones that happened to be near the houses where we were working. But overall, they thought the product was attractive and would sell. They didn't have the bottles, in hand for the most part that were suitable. And they also suggested similar price range, unprompted, $1 to $2 is what they thought they could sell it for. So more of that feedback about pricing. So to summarize, key findings, I've mentioned the positives. The households find it appealing and easy to use. An important finding that came through from the qualitative interview results was people said that they thought that children and the elderly could use this very easily, especially elderly people who had trouble, moving around, it might be physically challenged. They liked that it was easy to turn on and off and simple. You didn't have to pick up anything or carry anything. So that's important feedback. Improvement suggested always focused on increasing size or capacity. And I mentioned that some households would really like more than one. Other than that, the water consumption I mentioned is a selling point, and the bottle size, might be a concern, but people have bottles, just whether they're bigger or smaller. But all the bottles that we tried fit, and here you can see another example where they replaced the bottle with a small soda bottle, and it works just fine, which is really a great feature of the product. So a few lessons that we draw from this. First of all, local preferences, availability of water, and alternatives on the market are the most important drivers of how people feel about whether they're going to purchase the product and how they view it. In Kenya, we had people in a very water scarce region that often did not have a hand washing facility already, and there's nothing for sale in the shops. And so their number one feedback was, that the low water usage was a benefit, but also they mentioned that having a hand washing solution like this would lead to better health in their communities. In Tanzania, some people mentioned, hey, when I come back from the fields, I'm really covered in mud and I want to wash off, and this thing doesn't have enough flow, So where you have plenty of water, people are going to have that feedback. And we see the same thing over here from India and Bangladesh. In the water scarce area in Maharashtra, very few people mentioned that they wanted that the flow was not sufficient, whereas half in the other places did mention it. And then in Ethiopia, we have the situation where there's a lot of things on the market because it's an urban area, and they have a cheaper alternative that's not very functional. It's just a bucket you have to pour. But it may be harder to overcome that, complacency if they think that's good enough, and they're the least likely to purchase. I wanted to mention really quickly some limitations. Obviously, this is a small sample, only 100 households in 5 countries, not a big geographical coverage. It's one region each. We didn't talk about regulatory issues, that would be involved, that we've run into with SATO pans, which, may slow down things, but ultimately have been overcome with the SATO pan. But would need to be addressed. And, again, the pricing study was hypothetical, so we really need to get data on once the price is decided by Lixil. They need to get feedback from the places they're going to sell to see how that looks. And lastly, recommendations from us, from our point of view, we feel like, developing a version of the tap with a larger reservoir and a higher flow rate might be desirable in places where there's plenty of water and people would like, to not fill it as much and have more flow available. Promotions at like 2 for 1 or 50% off the second one would be really smart, because it would not only, people do want more than one in their house, but we also want them to hand wash at critical times, which include making food, going to the bathroom, and when they come home. So that could be really useful for a sanitation and hygiene program. And finally, we suggest some attributes that you should emphasize in marketing depending on the situation. So it's really important that, wherever you go into a market, you understand what people are using instead and what the options are. And where there's no facilities, the health benefits are most impressive, and the novelty of the device attracts people because it looks cool and interesting and new. In water scarce areas, obviously low water use is the big selling point. And then, finally, in places where the alternative is more expensive, you should emphasize price and value rather than the functionality, where the alternative might be easier to use, or might last longer, but it's not as cost effective to them. So if there's time for questions, we'll take them. I haven't seen if there are any, but also I think we have time at the end. But I want to thank everybody for engaging us in this project. It's been really fun for us and our teams in these countries, and look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Great, thanks so much, John. As you said, it was a small study and a rapid study, but very rich findings, and sort of gave us a whole multi-directional pointers to take and investigate further as we go forward with the TAP. So really appreciate that. The study, the findings, this wasn't even the whole set of findings that you presented today. So we really appreciate all this work that's got into it from you and the support from UNICEF. I think we can take a few questions, but before we do that, since it is a continuous process, I'd like to just turn back to Daigo, because I think some of these have led to other discussions in other parts of the R&D process. So Daigo, you just want to comment on any of the findings you heard? That would be great. Thanks.
Yeah, great. Hey, thanks for that, John. Thanks, Jason. So yeah, I just wanted to update all on the findings that M-Water just presented. So on the flow rate, we made some adjustments to the units and the dispensing hole, the size of the hole, to increase the flow rate a little bit. And we've tested it, and what's being produced now have that latest hole size. So we had made that adjustment according, to the research findings, and also on the refill. So we're currently working on the expansion of the solution to accommodate more robust use cases. So we're learning, all this, through these studies, and so we're in the phase of adding, more features and functionalities, to the units. So that's what we're working on. And on the price point, yeah, there too, we're adjusting with the global sourcing and procurement to ensure we can provide these units at an affordable price point. So those are some of the things we're working on now. Back to you, Jason.
Great, thank you, Daigo. There was a few questions. I think they've been answered. We'll circle back to those at the end and summarize if we have time. There is one question in the chat box. Looks like it's for Daigo and John. And it's from Sam Godfrey at UNICEF in East Africa. And he's saying during the COVID pandemic here in East Africa, there has been a rapid increase in distribution and uptake of ethanol or alcohol hand sanitizers, which have been distributed for free for all settings. Given the cost of soap and infrastructure costs of water supply, which market segments from these important trials is the most appropriate to target the SATO tap? And he's suggesting urban, rural, household institutions, humanitarian, or development. Daigo, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think, again, the pandemic, doesn't know country borders. So we see this as a global, community, and wherever people need to hand wash, I think there's a good need for that in the market for that. Yeah. So having said that, though, as pandemic response, we want to get these units out, to the people that need them the most as soon as possible. So all of those markets are critical, but we can prioritize depending on the the ramp up and the production capacity, and how we can get the distribution out to the people. So we can, there's a lot of parameters that we need to consider when we prioritize those markets, but those are some of the things we're currently working on internally and with our partners.
Thanks. John, did you have any impressions on that through the study and some of the recommendations you?
Yeah, thanks, Sam and Kumbu. That's a really good consideration. And we were thinking about this a lot too, like based on this, where does this make the most sense to go first? And I think, my impression would be rural areas, remote areas, water scarce areas, obviously displaced persons camps would qualify as that. And compared to the alcohol sanitizing, if your hands are dirty, I think there's a lot of evidence that, alcohol sanitizers don't work as well. So I think, and just having your hands dirty, coming back from working in the fields or working, outside the house or around the house, I think people would value the ability to wash their hands with soap quickly, without having to go get water, go find water, go to the water point. A lot of people would have to go to the tube well or to their water source to wash their hands. If they had this device, I think they would do it more often. So that would be my thoughts. Probably urban areas, maybe less so, unless you focus on putting the device in places where people are coming back from, or public markets are coming back from, going outside or something. But those would be my thoughts. But I think those are just really opinions, and you'd have to test it out.
Sure. Great, thanks, John. I think that's actually a great segue to move to how our markets are looking at this going forward. There was a hand up, and I think we will come back to that question at the end. But first, I think we'd like to hear from our market leads on the plans for the TAP going forward. And to start us off with that, I'd like to introduce Sam Lungat, who many of you know and is the leader for SATO in Africa. Welcome, Sam.
Yeah, thank you, Jason, and greetings to you all. Well, it's always a pleasure just coming together and, just having conversations that are impacting livelihoods. And before I proceed, I'd like to share my screen so that as I talk, at least you will have something that represents exactly what is happening on the ground. Yeah, so as you've heard, not only from John in M-Water, but also from Daigo, SATO Tap really has potential to be revolutionary hand washing. And usually the question when you have an amazing product is always, how can I get my hands on one? And this is really the very next step that we have as a business in Africa. And it's really about delivering the SATO tap to users everywhere it is needed. Well, we are pleased to confirm that there are plans in place for the commercial launch of SATO tap in the region, and we're looking at later this year. Now, in regards to manufacturing, because that's the commercial, being able to just have it commercially available for anybody who wants to buy. But as of now, we have manufacturing already established from our Tanzania licensee hub, and as you can see on the screen, on the extreme left, those are cartons of SATO taps ready to ship. And so this hub was commissioned. So the production itself was commissioned early February of this year. And from this Tanzania hub, we will be supplying predominantly Eastern and Southern African markets. And that's because Tanzania is strategically based, that way, or placed that way. And to date, and those are the cartons that you see there, we've already shipped SATO tap, not only locally in Tanzania, but also in Uganda market through our local partner and partners. So really what I'm saying is that we recognize the importance of availability. And we are establishing a strong route to market, just to ensure that there's that continuity of supply for SATO tap. And part of how we do this is by leveraging the existing SATO toilet sales, the channels that we have for sales and trade partners that are already existing, that have been developed in the past years, plus also developing new ones. SATO tap is different, it's unique. Unlike the toilet where you need perhaps someone technical to install a toilet, SATO tap is plug and play. And that means that it should be available and can be made available across many channels. So really what we're looking at is that greater penetration and reach. And this is actually to address the question that was asked earlier by Sam, of UNICEF. And the idea is that SATO tap is that robust, can be used across different needs, be it, like you can see the school children, you can see the marketplace vendor, it can be used in campsites. It's really that robust as a product. Yeah, and also we're looking at e-commerce. This is a new channel, and it's one that we are because we've seen the penetration of mobile phones. We've seen, because of COVID, the change in behavior and trends. People are now going online to order a lot more. And even without our intervention, we already started seeing some of our products online. So we really want to ensure that we're able to, ensure that SATO tap is available, across many platforms. And really our aim is to ensure continuous availability of SATO tap to these multiple markets, homes, businesses, the food vendor that I've mentioned, and equally institutions. And hopefully, as Daigo continues with his innovation, we'll be able to cater to more than what we see today or what we anticipate today. Moving on to the second slide, here we're looking at awareness, and it's part of the building blocks, part of what allows us as a business to ensure that our products are visible and available, and that is really awareness and visibility. And really, what comes to mind is people want to know. Yes, we've heard of SATO tap, we've heard of its unique benefits, but where can we find it, right? So our plan is to really support and invest in this particular SATO tap by building awareness, number one. Two is leveraging existing brand channels, such as social media platforms that we have today that's very vibrant, and equally the trade. Yeah, and our plan is to really implement a robust marketing strategy. And evidence from the images, just to show, really how we've been able to successfully do. This is our best practice, and this is, what we've been able to do not only with, our, with the SATO toilets, but you can see we already, merchandising the SATO tap and bringing the tap to different owners. Right in the middle there on top is someone, one of our salespeople with his car, just allowing for that customer experience. Then there's merchandising. We have, amazing branding across different outlets and even in schools, because it's not really just about the brand, but bringing awareness about the importance of sanitation and hand hygiene in this case. So, what I'm doing really is I'm just trying to highlight, what is very important and tangible value of our sales promoters as well. So we have what we do for marketing, but also we have what we're able to do through, the people aspect. We have our sales promoters across the markets that, today we are in. And really the aim here is to establish a strong market presence and build on exactly what we have, which is SATO's existing strong goodwill in the markets across Africa. And then last but not least, and this is so important, you can see, a very happy owner of an improved toilet, which has a SATO toilet, but also the fact that she has a SATO tap. So this was part of our own, initiative to see, the reception of SATO tap in one of the, marketplaces that today, we are in. And this was in a place in Kenya, in Kitui. And really, what I'd like to leave, all of you with is, as a business, we see SATO tap as an important addition to our portfolio, and also to our purpose. Our purpose is really to offer better everyday life, and a brighter future to everyone in the world, right? And for me, it's, I'm looking at Africa through access to both sanitation and hygiene. And so that's why SATO tap really comes in to complement what's already good, with our SATO toilets. So, I'd like to just, reach out to whoever is listening in, and really, if you want to join us, whether public or private sector, and help us improve sanitation and hygiene in Africa, please feel free to do so. So thank you all for listening in. I'll be happy to take questions when the time allows. And back to you, Jason. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Sam. Love the last visual. I think that's what it's all about, what we're trying to do here as partners in all the markets. So thank you so much for that. We'd also like to hear from our lead for both East and South Asia. So I'd like to introduce Suguru Sakata, who will get a bit of flavor of what the plans are for the TAP in Asia. Welcome, Suguru.
Thank you, Jason. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. So at first, let me share the screens. Yeah, so today my team introduced our new innovation SATO tap to everyone. So our SATO team is always try to solve the people's problems and the challenge by providing the product innovations. And at the same time, we need to change the business innovation. So to this end, I would like to introduce regional insight, how SATO is challenging the variety of the approaches in the market. So I will share the regional insight about collaboration with other groups and organizations, which made a challenge to fund. Also, building a sales channel to reach out to users who living in rural communities, also accessibilities of the product. So first approach is to collaborate with other groups and organizations. Even pandemic situations, we collaborated with Habitat for Humanities and donated 55,000 units of SATO to high emergency areas. I strongly believe both organizations were able to demonstrate their respective strengths in these collaborations. So SATO could focus on the productions. So usually we will focus on the productions and the distributions, but at this moment, we just focus on the productions, and Habitat for Humanities focus on the response for the community's need. So response is ongoing, and we are planning to bring new technologies into the community to collect the feedback using mobile applications. This product feedback will give us better ideas and also what products are really needed for the futures. And also it's a good opportunities to know the motivations for users to develop the hygiene habit of hand washing. Also, we use SATO tap to raise awareness of the importance of the hygiene practice. With the Japan International Cooperation Agency, we collaborate and we join their awareness building campaigns. This collaboration use animation enhanced lectures and also SATO tap experience sessions to convey the importance of the hand washing in rural areas, schools, and hospitals. So we collaborate with partners with new digital technologies, also some animations, and make challenge to fun. So you can see the left pictures. This is from the JICA project, and people is very enjoying the SATO tab and also programs. In terms of the sales channel development, our regional sales team are working to develop the retail outlets so that as many people as possible can access to our product in India. This year, one of our channel partner has started to sell SATO product in e-commerce platform. We have started our SATO business in India since 2016. We developed our sales channel in many states in India, but we realized some of the users cannot reach out to our product due to the lack of the supply chain network. So to reach out in rural communities, we have been developing SATO Mason Mart in rural communities. So this SATO Mason Mart concept is very simple. We will give training and education to masons who construct toilet till now. In the training and educations, we will provide not only installation method and maintenance, but also we give the training and educate how to open and how to manage their stores. So they will be entrepreneurs from the masons, and they will run their own stores in the communities. So some cases we collaborated with Microfinance Institute, and they gave the finance support to Mason Mart owners to run their business. So of course, their income will goes up, and they started to keep small stocks in their stores. So as a result, we can reach out users who cannot access our innovative product until now. As for masons, he has changed from being one of the masons to shop owners. So his awareness of sanitation has also changed. In addition to new supply chain development, we are working to drive consumer awareness of importance of toilet use as part of our effort. So we believe installing toilet is not enough. That's why we work with UNICEF and NGO to promote understanding of the importance of the toilet use. Last point is SATO product portfolio and accessibilities. So in India, right now we have a SATO stool, B-trap system, I-trap system, and original pan in India. These products are customized for the regional requirement and behavior change. For example, our SATO B-trap systems are fit for twin pit latrine in India. To fit with government guidance, we develop and commercialize. So we focus on leaving no one behind. When we started our business in India, we started with a squatting type of pan and the trap system in the beginning because of the research result and also customer and behaviors. However, after a few years, we realized some people cannot use squatting type of toilet, especially people with disabilities and the small children. So we decided and commercialized our SATO stool in India market. This is in line with our company commitment to providing solution to enable access to safe and hygiene sanitation practice, especially for women and girls, as well as preventing harmful transmission of disease for children. So in this October, we will launch a new product, SATO Tap, in India. Through this new innovative hand washing SATO Tap, we will provide an environment where more people can access easily and wash their hand hygienically with partners. Yeah, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please send to chat. Yeah, back to Jason.
Hey, thanks a lot, Suguru. A lot going on. It's such a big part of the world, and I think it was clear, and thanks for kind of talking about how the channels are addressing both the humanitarian and COVID response needs while building up the commercial networks and structures for the future. So we are at the end of the presentations now. We'd like to take any questions. There was a hand up from Edmund Kiplangat. I don't know if your question was addressed, but you're very welcome to speak and ask your question. And I think someone will unmute you now, so you can do so. Let me see if we can get you unmuted. There, go ahead. Yeah, I was wondering, Anush or Janina, if you could unmute Edmund Kippengot, who has his hand up.
He should be fine. He should be able to talk now.
Great. Please go ahead.
I think he needs to unmute his microphone.
Oh, you need to unmute your own too. Okay. Edmund, can you hear us? Just unmute yourself.
Hello. Yes, hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Yes,
You
sorry.
had a question.
I had a question. Regarding the I could see that it's a brilliant product, and then I've sort of followed the PAN model as well, which is going very well. So my question was that because you're working in the developing world, especially in Africa, and even if we talk about Asia, it's India and Bangladesh, and you have a similar market like Pakistan, for instance. So is there any like impact study, or is there any consideration that is going on for that market as of now?
Pakistan?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. We are shipping occasionally products to Pakistan, but we don't have operations there. Perhaps I could ask Suguru or Aaron
Okay.
to speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Abdul. And, I think where we really think about our market expansion is that ultimately our goal is that SATO products are available to any customer who needs it and there is demand. And so ultimately, that is really our vision. Where we have products available has historically depended on our ability to find manufacturing and distribution partners, and also just making trade-offs and expansion with our own available resources. And partners to implement. As Jason said, we have shipped to Pakistan in the past. As other markets, there were also questions about Tajikistan and Central Asia, as well as Latin America. And so, market expansion for us is something that we are doing at a pace that is sustainable, that we can support these partners in the markets with all of the great activities that Sam and Suguru described, the promotion, the training, the awareness building, and the behavior change. So with that said, I think if there are partners who would like to work with SATO, I saw there was also a question about that in Kenya, please reach out to us through our website. We are always open to exploring new partnerships. We also can make our products available through shipments, in certain quantities for project or program implementation as well. So, please do reach out if you have questions about any specific market, and, we're very happy to have a conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, okay, just to add on that, actually we are primarily a manufacturing company, so we are into pipes, and we were one of the biggest suppliers for UNICEF in Pakistan for a long time, and some of the other countries back in the 90s even. So if that is the case, that can be looked into. And sustainability as such, we are also working with some schools, to develop the wash consideration, and also now started up a new sustainability business in London. So the main thing is we are focusing globally, and I'll probably look into that. And I'm actually connecting with your Grow Here Pakistan as well. I think it's related to Lixil, so I'll check with them as well.
Great.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Abdul.
Thank you, Abdul. Please do get in touch. Okay, I think we had another question. Edmund, if you are ready for your question, please go ahead and unmute.
Jason, you're on mute.
And I'm totally on mute. Thank you, Erin. I had just gone back to Sam. I was wondering, Sam, if you'd like to address the question from Isaac about how we can join as an organization to improve sanitation in our working areas. And this is from Kenya Aqua Clara Isaac.
Oh, thanks, thanks, Jason, and thanks, Isaac, for expressing your interest to partner with us. Yeah, I know that we've had some engagement with regards to the other side of sanitation, and so having that good history, I think, sets up a good base for us to work together. So I believe this is just a good opportunity to have that conversation, offline. I've already shared my contact with you, so please feel free. Thank you, Jason. There you go. So just feel free to reach out, and we'll have better discussions in details as to how to best collaborate in Kenya. And thank you for supporting us on the sanitation side. Thank you. Back to you, Jason.
Thanks a lot, Sam. So you're welcome to get in touch with us through our website. Everyone you've heard from today is also, our emails are here, so please keep in touch and reach out, especially we saw some comments on partnering opportunities. We would love to hear from you going forward. And I just wanted to give a last chance to Edmund. I think I was on mute before, but he had his hand up. You can unmute if you like and ask your question before we close. Thanks. Okay, and with that, I think there is a quick poll on the session. It's uploaded. I'm not sure how we launch that. Is that Charlene or is that you, Janina?
It's at the end. Yeah, that's here.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So as we close, there's a few poll questions for you. But other than that, I wanted to thank everyone, our team, the UNICEF team, MWater, and most especially to each and every participant who joined us through Zoom, through Facebook, and on YouTube. We really appreciate you joining us. Please keep in touch and stay safe. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye.